Hello, today on Larissa's Kitchen we're going to be making drop cookies. Now drop cookies are so popular because there's no time between making the dough and putting it on the pans and baking it. Alright, we're going to be making two different kinds, chocolate chip cookies and Gingersnap cookies. So let's get started with the chocolate chip cookies. Alright, I've got 1 cup of butter that I've cut up just because it's going to be easier to stir. This is still cold. You do not have to let this soften. We will be using a total of 1.5 cups of sugars. I like my cookies to be a little chewier, so I've only got 1/2 cup of white sugar and a whole cup of brown sugar. If you like your cookies to be a little crisper, you can go with 3/4 and 3/4, or you can even go up to 1 cup of white sugar and 1/2 cup of brown sugar. All right, so the first thing we want to do is get our sugars poured into our fat. And then we are going to mix this up on medium speed in our mixer until it is light and fluffy and everything is incorporated. So let's get this going. This is going to mix for a while. Okay, we're going to scrape down the sides on this so that we can make sure everything gets mixed up. Then once we do that, we're going to put it back on the mixer and beat it at a little bit higher speed to make sure that everything gets nice and fluffy. Okay, this has lightened up considerably and gotten much more fluffy. So we're going to go ahead and scrape down the sides one more time. We'll put this back on the mixer, and then we are going to mix in 2 whole eggs that have been very slightly beaten. And then we're going to continue to mix that until it gets nice and light and fluffy. So we're going to mix this on low. Turn it up a little. Okay, that's just been going for a minute or a minute and a half. What's going to give these cookies a little bit of lift is the air that we incorporate into the mixture. And we're going to incorporate that in through the eggs and the egg whites. We'll also be adding a little bit of baking soda, which is going to give them a double lift. Alright, so right now we need to add about 1 teaspoon of salt and all of our vanilla. And we're going to let this stir just a little bit longer. I'm going to scrape down the sides here. We're just going to let this stir a little bit longer until it all combines. Okay, now up to this point, it's very difficult to overmix these cookies. They'll just get a little bit lighter and fluffier. Once we start to add in our flour, which is our protein, we have to be very careful about how high we mix and how long we mix for. If we overmix these, they will start to get hard. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and add my baking soda directly into my flour. And then we will gradually add in the flour to our cookie dough mixture here. This is 2 1/4 cups of flour and about 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So we're going to mix it really slow. Actually, we're going to start with this down and bring it up. We're going to let this flour incorporate, and then I'm going to run it on high for just a couple of seconds to get it completely mixed together, and then I'm going to turn it off and then add more. Okay, so it's completely mixed up. We're going to run it on high. Just for a second. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add some more flour. Do the same thing. We'll start it off with the bowl down and gradually lift it. that's mixed up, we're going to run it on high real fast. Okay, we're going to put the rest of our flour in. Same thing, start it on low, mix it on high for just a second. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and add a full 12 ounces of milk chocolate chips. Now I actually like milk chocolate. You can use semi-sweet or whatever you like. You can also use, there's a mini version of the chips, which if you don't like such large chips, that's a wonderful alternative too. This, we only want to run the mixer for just a couple of seconds because otherwise we will start to break up our chocolate and it will turn into crumbs. So we're just going to run this. That's all we need to do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take this down, scrape down the sides, and then we're going to go ahead and start dishing this out. Okay, we're just getting this beater scraped off here. And like all good moms, I'm going to go ahead and give this to my daughter.
Thank you, Mommy.
All right, we'll get the sides scraped down. Okay, we're getting ready to drop these cookies onto our sheets. Now, before we do this, we want to make sure that our oven is preheated to 375, and I've got my convection oven turned on. The convection oven will actually allow these cookies to bake more evenly in a shorter amount of time. All right, the other thing, we need to make sure that our pans are covered with some sort of a paper. Now, I use parchment paper. If you use wax paper, wax will melt at these temperatures, and then your cookies will actually stick to the wax paper. So this is parchment paper. This is paper covered with food-grade silicone. Now, the important step in making drop cookies is that all your cookies are the same size. The easiest way to do that is with a disher. I'm using 1.5 size 40 or a 1.5 tablespoon disher so that all of our cookies will be the same size. Now I know that from past experience making these, this is going to make 40 of this size cookies. So let's get started. Alright, we're getting ready to stick these in the oven. Now, I do these for roughly 11 minutes, but right now I'm going to set this timer for 9, and then we're going to see what they look like at 9 minutes, and then we might add an additional minute onto the time. Okay, this timer has gone off. Let's check these. Oh, let's give them maybe 1 more minute to completely set. They still look a little bit loose on top. Alright, the timer has gone off for that additional minute, and these look good. So we're going to take these out, put in the next tray. We only want to do 1 tray at a time so that these cookies bake evenly. And based on how they're cooking, I'm going to go ahead and set this timer for 10 minutes. Alright, now one other thing about using parchment paper is it makes getting these off the tray very, very easily. All we have to do is just tip this down and slide this right off. And then we're going to get this tray outside to cool. Alright, we're going to go ahead and move these cookies from the parchment paper to the other cooling rack to make space. So this is another good thing about the parchment paper is they just come right off. You do not need to use a spatula. Alright, now I get to taste these cookies. Now, I know you want to try your cookies hot from the oven, but really, hot cookies are just going to fall apart when you try to taste them. So, we let these cookies cool almost all the way. Alright, let's give this a try. It's nice and light, very chocolatey. Have to have a little bit of milk too. Next up are the Gingersnaps. So let's move on to the ingredients for those. You are going to need 3/4 of a cup of shortening, 1 beaten egg, 1/4 cup of unsulfured molasses, 1 cup of packed brown sugar, a teaspoon of baking soda, and I have about a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt under there. And then to make the spices that you're going to need are 1 teaspoon of ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. That's what's on top. We will be binding this all with 2 1/4 cups of flour, and eventually we are going to shape these into balls. We're going to roll them in sugar, and then they'll go on the baking sheet that way. So first off, we're going to dump all these ingredients in, plus about 1/2 of our flour, and then we're going to beat that until it's mixed, and then we'll beat in the remaining flour. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and scrape down these sides. We're going to get the rest of the flour put in here, and then we'll beat to combine. Now, this is different from the previous cookies we just made. These are not going to get very puffy. In fact, Gingersnaps will end up being flat when they're done cooking. So these are not going to be as puffy or as light. They're actually going to be quite firm when we're to the stage of putting them together. But we still don't want to overmix this flour. All right, this looks done. We'll go ahead and get this out of here, and we'll scrape down the sides, and then we're going to be using 2 teaspoons, or actually just 1 teaspoon, to get enough dough, and then we're going to shape that into a ball, roll it in the sugar, and put it on the cookie sheets. All right, the oven needs to be set to 375 and preheated, so these perfectly follow our chocolate chip cookies. So we're going to go ahead. We want to turn these into 1-inch balls, so that's about enough. Roll them. I want to dust them in this sugar, and then put them on our cookie sheets. And again, my cookie sheet is lined with parchment paper. The less you handle cookies, the better. All right, these cookies are nice and evenly spaced. They're going back into our 375-degree oven for 8 to 10 minutes until the cookies are set and the tops are a little bit crackly. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this for 8 minutes first, and then we'll check it from there. All right, the timer has gone off for the first 8 minutes, but the tops aren't crackling enough, so I am going to go ahead and add 1 more minute to this. Okay, these look good. I'm going to go ahead and take these out, change them over with their uncooked compadres. These smell delicious, by the way. I'm going to get the timer set for a full 9 minutes this time. All right, let's get these on the cooling rack. Okay, let's try these Gingersnap cookies. Now normally we should let these completely cool, and the longer they cool, the harder they're going to get, and that's what makes the snap. Oh, nice and spicy, delicious.